Welcome back, friends and scoundrels. I am Bran.
Robbie. Sarah.
And this is Horror in the Hills, specifically Movies with My Monsters, where I am introducing my children to horror movies and then we talk about it afterwards. So what did we watch today?
We watched the first 3 Scream movies.
Specifically, we're talking about Scream 3 because we've already talked about the first 2 movies, right?
Yeah.
So we did binge watch because it's been quite a while since we watched the other 2 and they didn't remember it until we started watching them. I think it was a ploy to get me to watch more movies. Anyways, so we did that so that way they could be refreshed and we could talk better about the 3rd movie. So, what was the 3rd movie about?
Sydney, Dewey, and Gail are in Hollywood, and murders start popping up there.
Do you have anything to add?
No.
Alright, so close enough. New Scream movies new Stab movies being made. Stab 3, and people start dying kind of around that. Well, yeah, they start dying in some loose connection to that movie. And then everybody comes together to investigate it for some reason. Do you guys have anything specific that you want to talk about? Well, what did you think of this movie at first? When first watching?
The first couple seconds, it didn't really feel like it was... It felt like you clicked on the wrong movie or something.
Yeah?
Yeah. I didn't really like this movie as well as the other 2.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on it besides the first couple of seconds? Did you like the movie or not?
I'm not sure.
Still processing?
Mm-hmm.
You want to revisit that question then?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you think that I clicked on the wrong movie?
'Cause, at first it was just a traffic jam. Why would this movie start with a traffic jam?
But who's in the... Okay. So you guys had already seen the second one, though. But the second one starts off even weirder because they're completely unrelated characters.
I forget the beginning of the second movie.
It starts off at the movie theater with Scream, or it was the Stab movie premiere. The first Stab movie. And then 2 people are killed in the theater. And they're just random people. But this one at least starts with Cotton. You know who Cotton is.
But the first couple seconds where it was just the traffic jam.
Oh, so?
What the first couple seconds, a helicopter flying over... Oh, yes. That's what got me.
It was setting up that there had been an accident or something and a lot of people were dead. I wonder if James covered that, used that in his kill count. Anyway, so what did you didn't like it as much? Why not?
Because I thought that it just didn't fit with the other movies in any way.
Well, how so?
Because most of the rules were followed in the other movies. But in this one, he said they found the tape, and with the rules for prequels and trilogies.
So you have original movie, sequel, and then trilogy.
And
so he establishes that you have to ask yourself, is this another sequel? If not, then those rules are out the window. It's a trilogy.
And it said that the bad guy was a super person.
Supernatural?
Yeah, but they weren't supernatural. They were just wearing a vest. It covers one of the rules from the first movie, too. Never say I'll be back.
They do reference back to that, yes. That's a reference back. But he did have the appearance of being supernatural throughout the movie, right? Because he was shot multiple times. Or seemed to be shot at any rate, right? Because when they're at, what's her name, Jennifer's house.
Yeah.
Dewey shoots him. Like, I saw the shots hit. Did you guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he just rolls under the car and goes away.
Because he was wearing the bulletproof vest.
Yes, but not knowing that, it would look like either Dewey missed or he's supernatural.
So realistically, unless he changed his armor between kills, that many shots would have gotten through the armor.
Not necessarily. Like, we do watch a lot of Demo Ranch, and there's a lot of stuff that he's able to shoot multiple times. It's not until you start getting into larger calibers that you start having problems with it going through.
Yeah.
And it depends on the armor, too. So, like, if Roman got it off Wish.com, probably not. But he probably had some decent 1A quality, at the very least. Or A1 or whatever, I forget what it's called. So, let's see here, what else? So, generally speaking, this is the least liked of the Scream movies. It's kind of a toss-up between this one and the fourth one for some people, but I'm not going to say any more on the fourth one because you guys haven't watched that yet.
They did throw in a bunch of stuff, like how Sydney had a mysterious brother she never knew about, and Randy's video clip. Randy's video clip at least makes sense to his character, because it would make sense that he would do that.
To some degree, yeah.
And Randy's sister, that doesn't make sense either.
Why doesn't Randy having a sister make sense? You got to get the videotape to him somehow.
Because it was never established that he had a sister in either of the first two movies.
No, but that doesn't matter too much, does it? Was it relevant to the plots in those movies?
No.
So it is something that's thrown in that was easy enough to add, but isn't really that big of a deal. Not as big of a deal as Sydney having a half-brother. What do you think?
About what?
I don't know what we're talking about.
Well, I didn't even know that person was Randy's brother.
Sister. How did you not know? She opened the door and everybody was like, "Wow, who are you?" And Sydney was like, "Whoa, that's Randy's sister."
No, Dewey said that.
Dewey said, "Whoa, that's Randy's sister."
Because I didn't hear it because it was so
And
loud.
then Sydney said, "Whoa, yeah, guys, that's Randy's sister." And then gives her a hug.
Because it was so loud.
You couldn't hear it because it was so loud?
Yeah.
Anyways. So, a lot of people don't like this one because it's more silly. Much sillier than the other two. Would you agree?
A little bit.
And they don't like the added backstory garbage.
Yeah.
I think, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. So, what's been an ongoing theme with these movies, though? In all three, it talks about the same thing.
Movies don't create killers. Movies make killers more creative.
No, even that's debatable. But, the influence of horror movies and violent media in general, so action movies don't get brought into it too much, but like horror movies and video games and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So we don't play any really violent video games, but there are some first-person shooters like Call of Duty and some military-based games. Those get brought up a lot because you're running around pretending to shoot people in the head and stuff. But that's something that has been a theme throughout all the movies, and something that the movies have struggled with throughout the entire, making of all of them, is, fighting with the MPA because of how violent they are. It was in the mid-90s and near the end of the 90s when the MPAA was starting to kind of loosen up again because society and the government were loosening up slightly. But there was still a lot of pressure on them to not make the movies as violent, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people call the first Scream movie really gory. I don't particularly find it too terribly gory, other than the opening scene. And maybe a little bit when Tatum gets caught in the door.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's really not that nasty, is it?
No.
So, and that's why, like, I like how that movie's set up, because the first scene is so effective. So going in with that imagery and that idea already planted in your head, the rest of the movie can seem more than what it actually is. Because, like, we barely even see what happens with the principal in the first one.
Yeah.
Now, the second one, I would still argue isn't quite as gory as people... Nobody really talks about it. It is gorier. There is definitely more blood, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got one really good scene with the detective in the car.
Yeah.
When the pipe goes through his head. But other than that, it's not really that much more, is it?
No.
It's like people get stabbed and then thrown around. I mean, it's almost as weak as the original Halloween. I know that's gonna pop some bubbles. But with this one, so the MPAA was on them to keep knocking stuff off, and it was very vague and about this is too much. Well, what's too much about it? It's just too much. Cut it down. Stuff like that. So we come into the third one. Now, I grew up in a time before shooter drills.
In schools?
Mm-hmm. And the reason why those happen now is because of a school shooting in Columbine. It wasn't necessarily the first one, but it was the first one to get major national attention. There's a decent body count on it, and it really shook the nation, right? Really scared people a lot. So that's part of the reason why this one's so much more ridiculous, is because it had come out right after that. Now, I have this theory, personally, and hopefully when I get somebody who's a little bit more knowledge on some of this stuff, I can have a better conversation with them about it. But I have this theory that we have movie stars that are being killed, right?
Yeah.
And then the non-movie stars. There's not a whole lot of them. And my theory before watching it, and I haven't watched this movie until today, since I've developed this theory, is that the movie ones, the movie star deaths, are more ridiculous than the real life people. What do you guys think about that? So
what do you mean by ridiculous?
They're over the top, and they're things that it'd be hard for them to happen in real life. So, like, oh, that's probably why they have the voice changer the way they do too, to make it less realistic, because that's another major issue that people have with this movie, because this was made in the early 2000s, 2001, so it was 20 years ago or so. We still don't have that technology now, where you can perfectly copy somebody's voice and speak through a machine and it mimic that voice. We do not have the capability to mimicry. It's a D&D reference. You guys are fired. So, what do you guys think? Do you think my theory holds water?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's St. Cotton and his girlfriend. I'm going to call them real and movie people, okay? So they're real people. Is their death more realistic?
Yeah.
It's not too crazily convoluted or anything?
No.
There's not too many moving parts and there's not too many coincidences?
No.
Other than the voice changer thing. Let's eliminate the voice changer thing. So, then who do we have next? We have Sarah, the blonde girl.
Yeah.
At the very beginning. Would you say hers is a little over the top? Or more over the top than what's normal for these movies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why so?
I forget all the specific details in that scene.
Roman, quote unquote, or not, quote unquote, calls her, says, I'll be there. Or she's supposed to meet him, but he's not there. He's on the freeway. And then they start going through reading and it changes the script on her.
Yeah.
And then she gets scared and runs down the hall. Now what makes that really convoluted? She hides in the costume room, right?
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of Scream costumes.
Uh-huh.
So it's not unrealistic for a studio to have a room with costumes for movies they're making, right?
Yeah.
But what are the odds that she's going to go into that room? There are plenty of other rooms. Especially after going to leave. Like, her first instinct was to leave. And then the security guard was there. So naturally, she'd be scared.
Because all she could see was a silhouette.
Mm-hmm. And she doesn't know what's going on. But, like, again, of all the rooms in that building, what are the odds that she would go into that building? That room?
Wasn't it, like, super far away, too?
I think so. And I don't remember her trying any other rooms. Do you guys?
No.
Yeah. So that's what makes it ridiculous for me. It's too coincidental. There are plenty of other options for her to go. I mean, there are freaking other exits out of the building all over the place.
There's probably a fire exit in most of the rooms.
Probably not most of them. Some of them, maybe. But they're usually at the ends of halls. So she could have gone to the T section and there probably would have been an exit right there. So, without getting too hung up on some of these. So then, our next death, I believe, is Stone, the security guard.
Yeah.
What do you think about his death?
Are you considering him a normal person or a movie person?
He's not in the movie, right?
Right.
And even though Cotton was in the movie, he was just a cameo, but he's an actual real person in the world, too. So is Stone. So I think we should consider him a real person, sorry. But, like, I question it, too, because his walks this fine line, right?
Yeah.
So, the killer was in there, presumably waiting.
Yeah.
But was he necessarily waiting for him?
No.
So, maybe that was just a murder of opportunity?
Or maybe he thought it was someone else.
Well, the killer knew who it was, because he called him.
Right.
And the killer was already in there waiting, and called him before he went in to Dewey's trailer. And for all we know, he had intention of going in Dewey's trailer before. Like, he didn't even know Dewey wasn't supposed to be in there.
Right.
So, I would call that an opportunity rather than a coincidence. That maybe the killer was waiting there for Dewey.
Yeah.
So, fairly realistic. Also, something I started paying attention to with Sarah's death was the blood coloring. Because her blood, was her blood normal colored? Or was it really bright?
It was really bright. Yeah. It was
like unusually bright, almost like paint.
It was like a pure red.
Whereas most of the other ones, it's quite a bit darker, more transparent.
Yeah.
Like a translucent kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe. So that's something I started paying attention to too, also. And it kind of holds up. I'd have to watch it again and pay better attention to that, or try to remember to.
It is like a night afterwards too, so the blood's kind of dry.
But does blood get brighter or darker as it dries?
Darker. Doesn't dried blood create scabs?
So to speak.
So darker.
It gets darker. It turns almost a brown color. So his blood's a little bit more normal looking. Although he does have the ridiculous moment of coming back after being stabbed and standing in the doorway.
Yeah.
So that was a little comical to me. But that might just be for comedic sake. And that's pretty much all I was taking notes on. So I don't really have very many notes for this. So I did put him under movie originally. So who do we got next? We have not Dewey. I forget his name.
Tom?
Yeah, Tom. So what about his death?
Why would you use a lighter?
So it's really, it goes beyond ridiculous. It's stupid, right?
Yeah.
This is another one of the things that a lot of people have a problem with this movie with. So it's a ridiculous setup. The printing the pages. You have to turn the gas line on and know for it to have filled the house up at that point. Unless there's a line directly into that room or something. Like, it would have to be going for a while. Emily. That's her name, right? The girl who's playing Sydney?
No, Angelina.
Angelina, that's right. I think her real name's Emily. What about hers? So here's a little caveat, right?
Yeah.
Towards the end of the movie, they do get a little bit better and a little bit more realistic. Hers is hard to tell. It lingers on it a bit. I didn't pay attention to the blood in time, but it is quick and simple. And the pulling her body away like that is kind of a horror trope.
Yeah.
So it's hard to... it being tropey, though, that might do it. What do you think? Do you think that's enough to keep it silly?
Yeah.
See, hers is so simple and everything. Even though I knew how this movie ended, I kept waiting for her to come back.
I actually thought she was the killer because of the bathroom scene.
Which is why that's there. Right? And she's really fidgety and weird and jumpy.
Yeah.
All the time. Who else do we got? Tyson is the other guy, right?
Yeah.
The Randy stand-in for Stab. So, we're still in movie, people. And we're kind of going in order. What do you think about his death?
Because he got stabbed like twice and then tried to crawl away to get help.
He was stabbed and then thrown into a thing and thrown off the balcony.
Right.
He did run away, but he wasn't able to get away.
Right.
Is there anything that stands out from that that's real insane?
No. But it reminded me of Cece in the second one, because she got thrown off the balcony.
It was reminiscent of that. You can use your voice because nobody can see you nodding, buddy. Also, when you see his blood later, even though it is dark, it's still a darker color.
Yeah.
So, maybe as the movie's gone along, or maybe those were original deaths and they didn't reshoot them or anything. Jennifer, what about hers? She's in the passageway behind the mirrors.
Yeah. I don't like the idea of the secret room thing. Yeah.
But whether you like it or not, it's still part of the movie.
Yeah.
And for what the movie's setting up, it makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
But do you think her death was ridiculous?
A little bit. Yeah.
In what way?
Because they didn't really need to throw a secret room in for it.
Well, she just got caught back there. Right? I mean, she didn't need to happen. No.
Yeah.
But, again, it's part of the setting of the house. It's part of what the movie's established, that this guy has those secret rooms. Do you know why that room had a secret room?
Why?
And those mirrors?
Why?
What do you think?
Safety precautions, maybe? So that he could get away if something happened?
Kinda. So, this might be part of the movie that's over your head a little bit, but it's that way he can watch people, or him and his friends, whoever, can watch people getting dressed and undressed. It's that way he can be gross. That's why. But I found it a little weird, or a little too ridiculous, because of Dewey shooting out the glass. He's shooting at the top because he's not sure what's going on, rather than just going away. Like, I know that would be kind of shitty thing to do, is to leave somebody, especially for somebody like Dewey, who's, a cop.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that he's only really a cop in the first one, because in the second one, he's still recovering from his wounds. In the third one, he's still kind of recovering a little bit, but not as much. He's still back in the office, at least, right?
Yeah.
Because he mentions, being at the police station, people calling, and he has access to records.
Yeah.
All right. So, the first Sydney attack. Oh, we didn't establish. I don't know. That one walks a fine line. Like, there's nothing really unrealistic about it, but I think it was done in a way to make it more comedic, if that's acceptable.
So, what about Ronan in the coffin?
What about Ronan in the coffin?
How did that happen? Because if Ronan's the killer, then he couldn't have died.
Unless he's supernatural. Okay, so was he really dead then?
No. Or maybe that because that Ronan had glasses, right?
That's a nitpicky thing, to be honest. I mean, good job paying attention to details, right? But he faked his death. He didn't actually die.
Then he washed all the blood off?
It's a movie and not a very good one. I mean, he could have changed his clothes. I mean, he did change his clothes. A little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all the killers have to change their clothes from one moment to another because Ghostface is always wearing black pants with black boots.
Yeah.
And very rarely do we see the killers outside of that costume even immediately after with black pants and black boots.
Right.
All right, so Sydney's first attack when she's on the set and going through her house. Minus all the fact that it's on a literal movie set. What do you think of that?
How did they fit a house in a building?
They're very big buildings. They're huge.
And how did they copy the house exactly? Almost exactly.
Well, outside's pretty easy. Inside's not too terribly difficult. You can recreate something off of basic descriptions. But, I'm sure their house was up on the market at some point. You could go in and take pictures. I mean, when we were looking for a house, wasn't there pictures up on the internet?
Yeah.
It's lots of ways.
Where does Sydney's dad live in this one?
I think with her. I think they live out in the middle of frickin' nowhere. But anyways, back to Sydney's first attack. Did you find it realistic? For the most part?
No, not really.
Why not?
With the room, because weren't they planning on doing like a flashback scene with the death of Sydney's mom in the stab movie? Is that what that room was?
The bloody room?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what does that have to do with Sydney being attacked? As I said, minus the part of her being on a literal movie set.
I didn't like the idea of her mom's ghost voice in her head.
Was it her mom's ghost voice? Or do you think it was Rowan with the voice changer?
I think it was in her head.
I think it was Rowan with the voice changer.
Even at her house with the dream thing?
No. That was just a weird dream sequence for some reason. Maybe to set up something that didn't follow through, or to play on the supernatural element of it a little bit, because that's the only actual ghost scene we see, right?
Right.
Any other time with a ghost marine under the sheet, we can presume that that's Ghostface.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on Sydney's first attack?
No.
And it's weird, but given the circumstances of the movie, not impossible for Rowan to have been able to recreate Marine's voice.
Right.
So, and then with the technology of that voice changer, he can add an echoey, ethereal element to it to make it weird. I don't think there's any actual ghost stuff in this movie other than Ghostface.
Right.
My big problem with it, and part of the reason why I wanted, what's her face?
Gail?
No.
Sydney?
No.
Jennifer?
No.
Dewey?
No. Her. Anita? Angelina. Part of the reason why I expected her to come back is because there are too many instances, especially in that first attack with Sydney, where you would have had to have a second person. Mind you, some of it could be the way the set's designed and him knowing the set. So like maybe there wasn't an actual wall behind the closet, but for him to get from upstairs to downstairs in that way, I suppose isn't. She falls off the window, goes back inside. I mean, he could have gone down there, but there's a few instances where it really feels like there should have been a second killer, because some of the movement of Ghostface is a little unnatural. It's teleporty.
It's interesting how they always assume the killer is male even after the second one.
Well, but they do always say him or her or them or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Because they don't know. And it could be a woman. Especially after the second one. But, realistically speaking, killers of that nature do tend to be white males. I mean, we can... Some point when you're a little bit better at looking at this stuff with me, we can look into serial killers. And we'll see that, especially more recently, that's true. You know, older documentation of some of this stuff isn't great. And who knows how accurate it is. So, Milton, what about his death?
I don't know how he would have captured him. Because in the first one, how Sydney's dad is captured, we can presume it's like from the beginning of the movie. Because that's when her dad leaves.
Mm-hmm.
But this, it's, I forget who all was there, but they were just, but some people were just visiting Milton.
So, we see him earlier that day in Milton's office.
Yeah.
Presumably in another building.
Yes.
Then, they have the party at Milton's house.
Mm-hmm.
So is it likely Roman just got there early?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All you had to do was knock him unconscious and tie him up and hide him in a room. Because he even comments earlier what's taking him so long or something. He makes a comment about Milton being late to the party or whatever, right?
Right.
Right?
Not that I remember.
When Dewey and Gale first get to the house?
Yeah.
Dewey and Gale. It's a tale of two Gales.
Another reason why I thought Angelina was the killer, so after Ghostface is shot and rolls under the car,
Mm-hmm.
Angelina shows up a couple moments later.
From a way different direction. I mean, that doesn't excuse her from being a killer, but it does lay suspicion on her, right?
Yeah.
And she's acting really weird, which kind of okay. But
yeah.
So Milton's death is fairly quick and simple. He just slits his throat and leaves him to lie. Nothing outrageous, but Milton is also a real person, right?
Yeah.
And then Sydney's final attack with Rowan. What do you guys think about that?
It was very long and draggy.
What was realistic? Anybody?
I don't think it was too comical.
I noted down that it was brutal and kind of mean, and I'm going to refrain from calling things mean too often. But I mean, given the context of this movie, this is a person that thoroughly hates Sydney, right? So it makes sense for them to be mean to her.
Yeah. He had the knife. Why did he have to grab a baseball bat or whatever to hit her in the head multiple times instead of just kill her with the knife?
I forget. Maybe he dropped a knife or something. I don't remember too particularly well. I might have even been making notes at the time, so. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, he was talking an awful a lot when he could have just appeared and showed his face and then killed her.
So the monologuing problem.
Yeah.
Bad guys have that problem. Especially in movies.
How did the metal detector not catch Sydney's second gun?
Because it was in the same spot. So that's some of Sydney's clever resourcefulness.
Where did she get the second gun?
She had a gun in the beginning, remember? At her own house.
Right.
And then she grabbed the gun out of Kincaid's drawer.
What was the yellow thing she kept in her pocket? A taser?
No, spray. Pepper spray.
Why didn't she use that in the last scene? Because
I think she lost it on the movie set.
Yeah, I think she lost it at some point when she was jumping out of the house or something.
She did fall out of the window a couple of times. Fall, get thrown. And Roman's death. What do you think about Roman's death? Was it movie absurd or was it movie realistic?
Movie realistic. realistic.
For all intents and purposes, yeah. So do you think my theory holds up?
Yeah.
I think it was an intentional statement to, movie violence is movie violence and real life violence is real life violence.
Right.
To make that kind of a statement. What else? Is there anything that stood out to you guys that you wanted to talk about?
Well, Sarah's death reminded me about Deep Red.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the first death when the person's getting
Thrown up through the window?
Yeah.
Kinda?
Yeah.
Makes sense. Which is another movie trope, right?
Yeah.
Haven't we seen something... Well, I've seen something similar to that a lot of times. And, just a straight stabbing or something, that's very realistic, right?
Yeah.
It's, if you were going to attack somebody, would you try to throw them through a window or a door? Even in the moment when, things have gotten out of hand and you're just trying to kill a person, does that seem like a rational thought?
Yeah.
Kind of?
Yeah.
Maybe. Or, maybe try to just stab them in the back.
Yeah.
I don't know, it depends on the circumstances, right? So, circumstantially, that could work. But I think also movie tropes, I think it plays heavily on the movie tropes a lot. Whether it be horror movies or action movies or whatever.
Okay.
So, the explosion thing, that convoluted setup, that's a movie trope that we've seen in plenty of action movies or something similar. Well, Mommy and Daddy don't really watch those kind of action movies either. And it's happened in a few horror movies that you guys are nowhere near close to watching yet. So, again, any themes that you picked up on, want to talk about?
No.
For as ridiculous as this movie is, it does have some really good deep themes. I'm going to hold off on talking to you about the really big one. I'd have to explain too much here.
Okay.
And it's a conversation for when you guys better understand those things.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Okay.
So, let's talk about the franchise as a whole so far. Because it's only relevant to here. What do you think would have worked better for this movie?
In any specific scene or just in general?
In general. For me, I think 2 would have worked a little bit better if it was just... what's his name? Mickey?
Yeah.
And some random person doing a copycat killing or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That would have worked really well and not had Mrs. Loomis in there. I think bringing Mrs. Loomis in for the 3rd one would have helped this movie a lot more instead of making it Roman. And you could even have the subline, the subline. Use correct terminology, Daddy. The little bit that you do know. The subplot of Sydney having a half-brother and all of that went on with Milton and his gross parties and all that.
Yeah.
And her discovering that and using that to try to hurt Sydney. And then not even make Roman a killer, have him be a victim at some point. Or a victim in another way. Because then it doesn't ruin the first movie. It doesn't... It has a better explanation for this extra crap that's being introduced here. Because as you're telling a story, more stuff naturally gets introduced, right?
Yeah.
Either new stuff, new information coming... New events happening or new information about previous events, right?
Yeah.
Because flashbacks and prior information are okay. How many of your books do that?
A lot.
I mean, that's the whole basis of Breath of the Wild, right? Is everything that happened in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, you have your own story that you're going through now, but it's almost equally as focused on past events as it is the current events. Because even when you go into a town and you're talking to people, they're all talking about what happened 100 years ago.
The book I'm currently reading, the theme is based on past events for the main character.
So, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is the whole point of that.
Yeah.
And I think a second killer helps. It keeps the theme of the movie. I know you want to do something different, but sometimes you got to do the same. That's why Force Awakens isn't that bad. It's the whole point of the Star Wars movies is this poetic repetition for the people out there who might pick that up. So, after me saying my bit, do you guys have any ideas?
I think it would be better with Mrs. Loomis in the third one instead of Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have been her partner, though?
Could have been anybody. It's irrelevant.
Because then it would have eliminated this whole stupid thing with her half-brother and...
Well, and like I said, though, you could still keep that. And then she uses that to pit them against each other. You could still have Roman be the second killer, but instead of making this big grand scheme of him going to Marine and, oh no, I like this idea, of Rowan going to Marine before she dies and then setting all this up, right? Like, yeah. It is almost kind of like the way it's explained is like there's already dominoes set up randomly and he just kicks one over and then all of them happen to fall in place just right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is. Or him thinking he set up the dominoes in this way and flicked them over. But he hasn't. He's just doing shit.
I also think that he's this big guy and everybody else was just underneath him. Because he said he did this family movie thing, and it's what brought it to Billy's attention, and then it caused...
Well, he went and found Billy and was like, hey, I got this thing you're going to want to see. This is the reason why your mom left. So what I started mumbling to myself about there, about really liking it, what is... Miss Loomis start doing at the end of 2 with Cotton?
Tries to persuade him to let her kill Sydney.
Right. So that is within the character of Miss Loomis, is to manipulate people in that way to get what she wants.
Yeah.
And it would be a much better circular wrap-up of the story, right? Because you're tying back to the first one, which is what a story would do properly, would be to tie back to the first one in ways that make sense.
Yeah.
Whereas this doesn't. It's just, it falls into the horror sequel issues of trying to do too much.
Yeah.
When it doesn't need to. And product of the 90s and 2000s of trying to be bigger and better each time. Which, I mean, Wes Craven's a great director. The other thing is that Kevin Williamson wrote the first one. I believe he wrote the second one. No, maybe he didn't. Maybe he only wrote the first one. I forget. Let me investigate real quick. Because I think this one was Aaron Kruger. Yes. So, Kevin Williamson did write the first 2. And then he had other projects come up and he stepped away from the third one. Or there was some dispute. I don't remember all the details on it. Kind of irrelevant. And Aaron Kruger stepped in to write the third one. So Kevin Williamson did a little bit of work, but this is mostly Aaron Kruger's movie. And you have the writing. So that changes the tone a little bit too, right?
Yeah.
So, have you determined if you like this movie or not?
Not really.
I think when it comes time to watch these movies, I don't hate this movie. I have a better appreciation for it with my theories and stuff, but it's one I could leave. I could easily skip this movie and move right on to 4 and it not affect my feelings on make that the trilogy instead, maybe.
Yeah.
Or the continuation of the franchise, whatever, and not be affected by it one way or the other. But you'll have to make that determination when you watch 4 next week. Not that that's going to get released next week for all you people out there. Any final thoughts, Robbie? You've been quiet.
No.
No?
A couple things I didn't catch the first time watching the first one.
Oh yeah, we can go back to those.
Was that Dewey was Tatum's sister.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch that the first time. And that, I think Stu or Billy, at some point, like when they're watching the movie during the party thing, or in the final scenes, he says movies don't create killers.
Billy, was it Sydney says something to him about they've watched too many movies. And Billy says, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. I like that line. But I also don't think movies make psychos more creative. Because realistically, most of the people who do this kind of stuff in real life don't watch this type of stuff. It's fake sickos like us that watch this kind of stuff. Like a lot of these people are isolated from a lot of stuff. Or, it's just not in their character. Like, not something that they find enjoyment in, because some of them are trying to get away from those kinds of feelings and fail, or they're messed up. Do some of those people watch some of these movies? Yeah. But here's why that argument is stupid. This is my main reasoning for why that argument is stupid. There are 7 billion people on this planet, and hundreds of millions of people watch these movies and play these video games all across the world. Yet it's still only a small handful. Percentage-wise, we would never talk about it if we were looking at the numbers solely. Solely at the numbers. Because these are just bad people for whatever reason. Some of them are just bad. Some of them had bad things happen to them. But at the end of the day, they're just bad people, and bad people do bad things. So we can talk about motivations real quick. Billy holds on to the motivation that Sydney's mom ruined his life. Well, he got his revenge on Sydney's mom. Why does he need to go after everybody else?
What was Stu's motive?
He didn't even have one. Like, he says peer pressure. He's real sensitive to whatever it was he was going to say. But that's not a motivation. And, like, given Stu's character, you could say that's just his cheekiness.
Right. And then Mrs. Loomis's is Sydney killed Billy.
Mm-hmm. And her mom ruined her family.
And
So, again, like, I could see her going after Sydney. Like, that's reasonable, all things considered.
yeah.
But why does she have to kill everybody else? Other than to torment Sydney. Why does everybody else need to die? Which, we talked about it a little bit after watching it. I think most of those deaths, if not all of them, were committed by Mikey.
Because he was in it for the trial to blame the movies.
He just wanted to kill people, though. Like, 'cause he doesn't even have a motive either. He's just trying to be a stick in the pot to stir it. Like, he's trying to make a statement, but at the end of the day, he still just wants to kill people. And then Rowan, again, he's mad at Sydney for something that isn't her fault. And, the crime of passion or whatever, but still, like, that doesn't mean that all these other people had to die.
Right.
Man, they're just bad people. And they're finding an excuse to justify their badness. Which would be nice if one of these movies would end on saying that. Anyways, that's been our episode of Scream 3. Kinda messy, but a relatively natural conversation. Anything else?
Nope. Nope.
Well, till next time. Toodles.
Bye.